Boucher, thanks for joining me. So let's start with just some rapid-fire questions. Your favorite hockey player growing up?
Wayne Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky.
Peter Stastny would be the second one, but yeah.
And Peter Stastny because you were a huge Nordiques fan?
Let's say that I was born close to New Brunswick, which kind of the whole area, Mike still got a cottage there, and it's an area where you get probably the most Nordiques fans apart from Quebec.
So the Stastny Brothers, what was that like watching them growing up?
You know what? They were basically the first guys really came over and changed I'd say the relationship between European players and in North America, and kind of dared to do it. And obviously everybody knows now that it's wide open, but I think back then they're the guys who dared and made it happen and had an impact. So, if you look at the 1980s and you think of Wayne Gretzky with all his points, people forget that the second guy after Wayne was Peter Stastny.
Peter Stastny, yeah.
So you look at those days, and I think there was terrific rivalry that I hope eventually comes back between Montreal and Quebec. I know they're trying to get a team now, and a lot of people from Quebec are pulling for that. But I think you look back at those days, and it wasn't just a good rivalry. It was terrific hockey, and everybody benefited from it. And Marc Crawford, who I'm coaching with now, obviously was one of the coaches that was there, and won the cup after in Colorado, but really it started in Quebec. So there's some terrific memories and some icons that came out of there that later on became some guys that either are already in the Hall of Fame or going to be.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned one of the great rivalries, Montreal Canadiens, Quebec Nordiques. Now you're a head coach. You've been with Tampa Bay. You've been with Ottawa. Is there one that stands out right now? A lot of people talk Ottawa, Toronto. That's always been one. Now Ottawa, Montreal seems to be taking kind of the front and center. Is there one as a coach that stands out as being, we got to mark this game on the calendar. This is going to be a doozy.
When you're in, first of all the games matter. But
of course,
there are some games that have more hype around them. And obviously, in Ottawa, you're close to Montreal, you're going to get that. In the Battle of Ontario, you're going to get that with Toronto also. But I think every time that you play one of those original six teams, there's something different about it. And, even when we went to Detroit, we played the last game that was going to be played in Joe Louis, and that was special. And Toronto, Detroit's not that close to Ottawa, but just the fact that it's an original six and it's one of those top teams that a lot of people have respect for and cheer for. If you go to Chicago, for instance, might probably have been to me, and apart from the playoffs, probably the craziest atmosphere that I've seen in an NHL setting in a regulation game, like in a regular season game. So there's so much positive and exciting stuff in the NHL right now that you can go around. And I've never lived in Calgary or I've been an Edmonton fan also when I was young, like everybody. I guess everybody was a Gretzky fan, and whatever the Oilers were doing back then, I think was something that not a lot of teams could do, and still today. So you look at their rivalry, that's persisted. Obviously there's the proximity between the cities that usually, but also I think you look back for us in Tampa, it was weird because we didn't really have that big of a rivalry with the Panthers, which are actually the closest team.
You would think, right?
You would think, but I think the rivalries are usually the most intense ones. They're built with playoffs opponents. And in Tampa, for us, there was the background with Philadelphia. I wasn't there the years before I came in, but they had built some rivalry there, so you could feel the tension. And when I was there, it was Washington a lot, and they were a top team, and they still are. So they were the team to beat. We got in the playoffs, and you could feel that there was something special there. So I think there's all kinds of rivalries that all come either because of the quality of the players, or because of the proximity, or you meet them in the playoffs and so on. But I think it's always about the duration of your excitement, regardless of where it comes from. And I think that's the beauty of sports in general, but obviously the NHL. So there are some old rivalries that are important that you feel, but I think the quality of players and the teams that you meet obviously will create, like Pittsburgh, for instance. We played them in the playoffs, but even when we play them in the playoffs, you're meeting Crosby and Malkin and the team that's been a standard for many years now. So it's automatic, and I think that's a beauty. It's basically it's dynamic. What I'm trying to say is that it's not just always the same teams. It changes from year to year depending on the circumstances.
Now you've gone a long way in your career. You started in the Q, and you worked your way to Tampa Bay. You went over to Switzerland. Now you're with Ottawa. What do you think has changed for you as you've developed as a coach? Is there one thing that you've kind of tried to hone or change to make yourself a better coach?
Well, I think the coaches who make it to the NHL and they're able to get one job and then two jobs in the NHL all have to be able to adapt. That's clear. The work ethic that the other coaches have in the league is pretty impressive. It really is. I don't think people realize the hours, and you sleep 3 to 5 hours a night on a regular basis, and you get to the playoffs, you basically don't sleep because you know the other coach is doing the same thing. So there's a lot of work that is put into it, and along the way there's so many people that help you become who you are and what you've become. I think that the main thing is once you get to this level and you've had a bit of success, you have some sort of a pattern that you can rely on. But I think that the fact that there's so many good coaches out there now in the league and so thorough that you learn from them too, and you wanna stay ahead of the game. You're constantly learning every day to be up to par. But I think that the difference between being in the NHL and coaching in the previous calibers is that the machine is so big that it's less about the hockey part than it is about the machine, the big picture, the things that you don't necessarily always control. And I think from my days in Tampa, you come in, you do your thing like you've always done, but you realize that there's almost 40% that you don't control.
Yeah. And
it's hard to accept. And before you understand that, you spend a lot of energy on things that are not taking you anywhere and that you get frustrated about. And I think my second time around, that's what I think I probably improved my outlook on is that this is I don't control this. I'm not going to put any energy on it, and I'm going to control the things I can control. And basically, your energy, you can last longer. I remember the first year in Tampa. By Christmas time, I was worn out, and the other coaches told me the same thing. It was the same for them, but because they knew and they were older and they knew how to save their energy, they're able to have by the end of the year a lot better outlook on what was happening and be able to prevent things that you don't want to happen and be able to really get things moving in the direction that you like, and a lot of it has to do with energy and enthusiasm and all that. And I've learned quite a bit from that. And the other thing is going to Switzerland. It was a family decision. And my wife's her dad's from Holland, and she had lived there in Switzerland. Her sister was living in Switzerland, and we wanted our kids to get a taste of where she's from and the kind of life that she's lived before, and open up some horizons for them culturally and in other aspects too. And it was the perfect move, but I never expected it would be the perfect move for me personally, and it really was. It made me step back, realize there's a life outside of hockey. You can coach at a high level and get a great pay and still have tons of time to do stuff with your family, which I didn't really have time to do with being an NHL coach. So the perspective totally changed for me, and when I came back, I was a much more balanced person. And I think that even if it would have been my second job in the NHL, if it would have been right after my first job, I don't think I would have had such a poise on what I was trying to be and do. And I think our family life would have been very different. So very fortunate that I was able to live that and realize that.
And that's important to keep that balance, to keep your family life, because they're what keeps you grounded.
Yeah, you know what? It's such a tough business where you're never home in the winter, and you're working 7 days out of 7 basically. And even when you're not working, your mind is like a teacher. You have to be prepared for the next day all the time. You can't just go home and wait for the next day. The next day, you have to have a plan, and you have to have a speech, and you have to have a practice, and you have to be prepared. And so those hours, you can't just get them out of nowhere. You gotta put the work, and very often it'll be in the middle of the night. And I just going back to our days in Switzerland, my relationship with my wife really strengthened my relationship with my kids, the whole family, enough to, first of all, get a breather, get perspective on life itself, but also see where I am as a man and what I want. And coming back in the NHL, it's easier for me to know what I want, not just in life, but hockey-wise too, is be able to put my energy in the right places.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you referenced that 40% number, because I don't think anyone wants to admit it in sports, but it always brings me back to a great Woody Allen movie, Match Point, which he references in accordance to tenets. And you'd rather be lucky than good, he says.
Yeah.
And in a sense, that is sports. You hit the tape on the net in tennis, it either goes over or it doesn't. Same with hitting the post and it going in or not. And anyway, I'm going to use that to segue to my favorite question. One of your favorite films and why?
There's quite a few movies that I enjoyed. I got a background. My first degree was in history, and of course, I love anything that's historical and things that are accurate. And I love to go back on the past because I think it gives us a much better look on what the future will be or should be, and things we need to learn to be better human beings and so on, and better societies. But there's one in particular. It dates back to the 80s, and it was terrific music score. And Enrico Morricone won the best music. It's called The Mission, and it's one of many movies that we saw from some really good actors, and looking back at that movie historically, it's there's a religious side to it. It's the Spanish and Portuguese coming to South Africa and the effect of that, and it's Robert De Niro, and
Can't go wrong with him.
Can't go wrong with him at the prime of his career. The acting is unbelievable. The values that you see portrayed in the movie are terrific. The scenic views that you like, it's unbelievable. I know it's quite a whiles away. I'm 46 now, so obviously there's a whole past of movies pooled movies that I can draw from. But I think this one, it really, for me, not just historically, but I think on the human side. The music, the view of the scenes that they've got, and the quality of the acting to me is just outstanding. And back then won tons of awards, and I've seen that movie I don't know how many times, and I could watch it again. Usually
I would end it here, but it's interesting you brought up music.
Yeah.
I've got to ask, is there one song that kind of pumps you up when you're getting ready for a big match, or even if you're going out to play pickup hockey and you want to be ready?
You know what? As a younger guy, obviously I love the pump up music. Older now, my father was a big fan of classical music.
Oh yeah.
And I know, it's not right now the most popular thing around, but I still think that's the original, real music that kind of where all the rest of the music's
still influential.
Yeah, absolutely. And people don't realize, and you get the Beethovens and the Mozarts and all that, then Tchaikovsky's and all that. I know quite well Bach, and my wife's uncle was in Holland, the #1 organ player. He played for the Queen and all that. I was always back, so there's a background there. But my father was a big classical music fan. So when you're young, you hear it in the car, and it's kind of annoying. But as you grow older, you see the value in it, and the whole background of classical music and how it's influenced the world, and still to this day. For me, I enjoy that a lot, not just because of the memories, but just because, just like people will love Led Zeppelin because it's kind of the start of a new era and so on. For me, classical music is like the beginning of all beginnings for music, and now today it translates into whether it's John Williams for movies, but right now I think that you look at a lot of scores from whether it's Batman or a lot of the other movies,
Lord of the Rings,
and so Hans Zimmer for me is my favorite.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Hans Zimmer. I'm a bit of an emotional guy.
Yeah,
and I like things that build up. And if you listen to Hans Zimmer's music, I mean it's hard to beat in terms of building up into an emotional moment in whatever movie it is. I just find that he's able to. John Williams was able to get you because he found these scores that were catchy. That you know, whether it's Indiana Jones or Star Wars and all that.
Yeah,
you know, you'll remember the rest of your life. But I found that Hans Zimmer just really emotionally grips you, and the music score is really important for me in music. My family is a lot of artists, and my mom was a painter. Both my sisters are painters. Actually, one of my sisters, one of the top in Canada, and she's got paintings all over the world that are being sold, and so there's an artistic side to our family. And for me, when I watch movies, the music side for me is big, and that's why the Missions is such a, there's one part actually we used in our wedding. I call it the most beautiful music in the world, but it's just me. We used it for our wedding.
Beautiful.
Yeah, in Enrico Morricone, like I said.
And an unbelievable composer.
Yeah,
he's still going at his age.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he's 87 now. Or something like that.
Just like John Williams is 80 some and still going, and he's still doing the Star Wars, and so that's impressive for me because they last. Like I think because of my job, you really have respect for these people that are able to last in their field. There's over X amount of years of entertainment. You can see people that you have these sparks of genius, and that's terrific. But the ones who constantly have those sparks of genius, that's unbelievable. Those are the real geniuses, and they're able to reproduce, and that's why guys like John Williams or Hans Zimmer, who's kind of the new guy, I think that's impressive. And I'm a big believer in learn from the best. And I got that from my dad. Like since I was a young age, is find out who's the best at whatever intrigues you or whatever you feel is something that you like. Find out who's the best and copy, at least a part of what they do, or try to copy it and bring in your own. And that's why every expert is somebody that I really have respect for. Because if you're an expert at something, it either comes from genius and hard work. It almost rarely is one or the other. It's usually both. And you look at all the experts, they're 10,000 hours, they call it, whatever it is, and whether it's Beethoven, he was a genius. Yeah, but he started at 2 and 3 years old to play music. So by the time he was 10 years old, he had done his 10,000 hours.
He had put his hours in for
10 or 15, 20 years before, everybody else had. And so, look at the Crosbys that I coach and guys like that. You look, they're so talented. Now, when you coach them, you understand. They do 2, 3, 4, 5 times more than everybody.
And that's what you see, right? These people, there's so many people with talent, but it's the people that actually show the effort and keep putting the amount of hours in. That brings them to that level.
That's what impresses me. Talent doesn't impress me anymore. I've seen too much over the years, and it's great. It's just, but there's a part of it's God-given. But the person that has the God-given talent, but on top of that puts in the hours of a guy that doesn't have that God-given talent and pushes and pushes and pushes, that combination is probably one of the things I respect the most on the planet.
Well, this has been great. I thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.